Leigh Girodat here with Micheila Sheldan, who is a channel. Is that how we introduce you as?
Definitely, yeah. Intuitive channel.
And I've had the pleasure of interviewing you once before,
Yes,
and you've come a long way. Well, we both have since then.
absolutely.
A lot's happened for you too, and a
Yes.
year and a half ago, I think it was now.
Has it been that long? Wow. Yeah. Seems like it was yesterday, but yes, in a year and a half, a lot has changed. Definitely.
Yeah, you just had your expo this last week, right?
We did just last weekend, just getting past the expo. And that's just always such an incredible time. It's busy, but it's so well worth it. We had so many people there who just completely transformed, amazing speakers. And I'll tell you what we're finding is we're attracting so many people who are moving from mainstream types of jobs and careers, all of a sudden just waking up and completely switching gears.
Yeah.
And it was fun to meet some of those people in person. I mean, literally going from medical professionals, CEOs, CFOs, to the next day, like quitting their job and searching for something within that they want to express here on the planet and moving into alternate fields of healing and teaching. And it's really incredible to see. So that was fun. Yes.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And you've been doing a lot more talking too on radio programs and such. It seems like you've been a lot more busy.
I have, I've definitely had some opportunities open up for me to share the message, which I think is all in divine order. What I've experienced in my life is when you're on your path and you stay in that lane, the universe is going to line up the things that you need in order to support what you're here to offer. And that's been my experience in the last year and a half. Is I've had some incredible doors open up for me to share the message and connect with people who are interested in the material. So it's been a great experience for me, exciting time for me, busy time for me, but I'm very grateful for all those opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed some of the interviews with Jimmy Church and
Yeah. That
yeah,
was a fun one. Yeah.
character. It seems like for sure.
Yeah.
And you've brought in some new channels, I guess you would say too. Like I know your work was a lot with the Palladians, but now
Yes.
you've kind of done some work with Ra.
I have. Yeah. And I'm actually just launching. It's interesting. We're interviewing today because today I'm launching my new channeled course. And that's one of the expressions of my work is I offer these channeled courses through a variety of beings. And I guess it was about 3 or 4 months back, I did a channeling where a lot of questions were asked about Mary Magdalene and her life journey and what was her purpose on the earth. And it was a really interesting channel. But since then, I've had her with me. And one of the things that she revealed in that channeling was that she had this intimate connection with Ra, and that she was here on the planet as an oracle or a channel for the Christ consciousness through, that time of Jesus walking as the divine feminine aspect of that timeline, but was actually channeling in information from Ra. So ever since I did that channeling, I've had Mary Magdalene and Ra really close within my energy. I've been downloading a lot of material from them. And it's interesting, the perception that we have of our physical reality in some of these past timelines and what's within us to evoke the remembrance of how we're here to create. And that's really the path they've taken me down. So that's been really fun for me.
Yeah, and what an interesting male-female balance there of the
Absolutely.
divine level, which is definitely something we're experiencing in our own physical bodies, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah. Here on the planet, everyone's talking about this insurgence of the divine feminine in order for us to be able to really shift, what's happened here. And it's an interesting dynamic, if you look out on the planet and you see some of the things that are happening, because from my perspective and based on the information I've been channeling, we're just reliving history. It's history bubbling up to the surface. And we've had a lot of this with the feminine movement lately that we've seen on social media and things like that. And what the guides have been talking about is, if you think back to some of the original feminist movements here on the planet, we actually perceived those in a male dominant energy, right? I mean, there was a lot of, we have to fight for equality, right? And this hierarchical structure and all this stuff. And we're here now to actually work through these issues from a different perspective in order to balance them, because we can see how we really haven't resolved a lot of what's happened here. And that's because we tried to resolve it in one dominant frequency or energy, which was masculine. Yeah. So now it's our chance to redo that from a different perspective. And I just had an interesting channeling at the expo, actually. Someone asked this question about the divine feminine and what really that is. And it was a long, beautiful answer, but to make it quite simple, the guides are talking about actually the mind versus the emotional body. Mm-hmm. And they're meant to work in concert. So our mental body, our mind is more of the masculine construct that we've dealt with things with on the planet. But the emotional body has not usually been the focus or the tool in a very conscious way for how to deal with these issues. And now we're learning, and that's the feminine aspect about how to work through these emotional issues with all of the things that we have erupting again, and shifting the consciousness of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The male energy is very action-based and very forward, like you said, more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we need both, I think that we need balance of both. And we came to be physical. So we're going to always want to be action oriented and doing things and exploring and creating, and there's a masculine aspect of that. It's just that, we've been really out of whack with how we do that here and what we've been taught we are, and how our internal component, is supposed to complement that. And I really think that's what we're moving towards. A lot of people that I experience in session here on the planet, they kind of understand, they're beginning to understand who they are and how they're different from what they've perceived themselves to be. But the creation of that is really the struggle. So I'm noticing people butting up against the male energy a lot in some of these old imprints because, for example, they all of a sudden realize they're a healer, or they have some energetic, gifts that they're wanting to share. But we tend to put it into this specific, I guess, definition of how we have to do it. We have to think it through. We have to plan it out. We have to have a strategy. All these things are very male focused, yet we're meant to accept that identity and vibrate as that person, because sometimes we don't even believe, I just got this message actually earlier this morning. The guys are talking about the difference between how we present ourselves in the world and what we really accept ourselves to be, right? And how many of us, we know, like on Facebook and Twitter, there's this image we have of ourselves that we project, but yet, there's this person that we are behind the image that doesn't necessarily line up. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, why project that image if you don't really truly believe that you are that person? That's kind of the gap that we're catching up to here. And so yeah, interesting time. I think we're learning how to create a different energy.
Yeah. And the tools within us, are changing, and those vibrations, right? And you speak of that as that, I think the Palladians said it with more like, it's like a technology within your system, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're awakening that inner technology, and it's really changing right now because, some of the synchronistic information that's been coming in for me lately is about the grids. And I've been talking about this in my channeled work for several years now, that there's a new grid that's been installed and activated, and that we're adjusting to this new harmonic grid. And our technology actually works differently in this grid because it's collective. Right. And we've been focused so in material and in singular that we've learned how to operate there. And now people are getting a little stuck. How do we create with this new collective technology? But really, this whole masculine feminine balance ties into that, because when we create potential timelines, or we're creating into our future, we're using the balance of the mind and the emotional body together to project in that energy, that vibrational energy. It manifests and pulls together all of the collective components that are needed to have an experience. And we've been so mentally driven that our emotional body has just followed the lead of where our mind has taken us. And we can still see that today. You know, we've got, for example, our mainstream news. You know, if we watch mainstream news, we can really let our minds take the lead on creating fear-based realities that don't match, you know, who we're becoming. And I think that's really what this new technology is all about. It's getting a handle on those really subtle, you know, thoughts, frequencies, emotions, and using them in concert to project into the future.
Yeah. And then there's this awareness of like, why would you create what you are creating? Like, you know, that.
Right. We haven't realized, you know, we've been creating without the conscious awareness of how we are creating. And this collective component, it's really becoming the stark contrast, because again, you know, we think it's just about us. We're just manifesting for us and for our families, you know, our immediate collective consciousness. But really everything that's happening here on the planet is tied to what we're doing. And actually at the expo last weekend, another really interesting message came up, and the guys are talking about uniqueness. So we've been taught to move away from our uniqueness and try to fit into a specific mold or look a certain way or be a certain way. And just that component, when we look out at the collective, a lot of the problems that we have exist because we're not living in our uniqueness. It's almost like this uniqueness that we are, it has a fit, you know, like a puzzle into all of this collective energy. So if you're not living in your uniqueness and at that highest potential that your uniqueness provides, you're not really serving the collective. And we got this all backwards. You know, we tried to avoid that and fit into something else. And that's, I think, what we're moving through right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because like, you know, there is a part of you that's been taught that you're all one and it's all the same, but then you have to remember that you are designed specifically as this being, as you said, one big piece of the puzzle. And sometimes people get the two confused because it's a oneness yet a uniqueness that comes together.
Right. That uniqueness supplements the oneness. I mean,
Right.
that's the thing. You know, we can't be a collective consciousness that functions in the benefit of humanity if we're not tapping into our uniqueness, because our uniqueness is needed for that collective energy to harmonize. And, you know, I work with a lot of collectives. So, for example, the Council of Light or the Pleiadians, they often will come in as a collective, and we think that means they're all the same, but that's not really true.
Right.
Each being that functions in that collective has a specific component of that collective that they're upholding. And they love to do that, you know, because they understand that that responsibility allows everyone else to function in love and peace, and, you know, from the highest perspective of that collective energy expanding. And, you know, that's really what humanity is rediscovering. I mean, we've always been a collective. You know, we've always been connected to all things. We just didn't realize how we were creating that collective. And now I think we're beginning to vision into that. And, you know, many people are beginning to step into these unique gifts as the catalyst for how change is going to take place here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't you find too that if people aren't standing in that place of their uniqueness or their truth, that they're attracting these vibrations that don't match anything of what they're wanting or
Right.
who they are? And,
Right.
you know, that creates so much dis-ease, I would say, and discomfort.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, a lot of my work focuses on the dimensional split that we have happening here. And this grid energy ties into that. So we're at a time on our planet where we've got two separate dimensional realities operating at the same time. And a lot of us are still tied to some of those old dimensional timelines. And, you know, the classic example of that is having a position of work that you chose because you were ignoring your uniqueness in some way and tried to fit yourself into a mold. And many people are discovering that that's not fulfilling them anymore.
Right.
But as they are creating now in this different timeline, which is higher dimensional, higher vibrational, they can move between these timelines and get stuck in it. That's really the crux of what a lot of people are experiencing and having difficulty with. And quite simply, that identity, that unique identity has to be called forward in order to fully integrate what's left.
Right.
Just like we were talking about, sometimes we have that identity that's outside of ourselves that we don't fully believe is who we are. And just that frequency alone can keep us from allowing that full shift to take place.
Right.
So we're choosing, we have the opportunity, we're free will, sovereign beings with an opportunity to choose whatever timeline we want to vibrate on. And we can still be, I would say, tidying up or tying up loose ends in some of these old timelines, but bringing that new consciousness to them, because that's really the key. It's like sometimes we lower ourselves to go back into these old experiences when really we're meant to go back into them with that new consciousness that we've adapted to, because that's the only way we can shift that reality.
Yeah. And something for me that I always find hard to bring into the fifth dimension is time. Like the calendar we have here, the clock we live by, and time we seem like it's the whole world is operating on that. How does that begin to shift?
Well, there's some interesting stuff around that. The first thing I'll say is, and I've worked with this in my own life, because I did a channeled course probably about 6 months back that addressed these things like the clock, the calendar. Again, it's our perception of these things that defines them. And we don't realize that humans actually define time. Time is infinite. There's no restriction on time, but we put the restrictions on time. And I've played with this in my own reality to really just let go of the expectations around time. And you just have to chip away at it a little bit. I think intention is a strong tool. If you start your day with intention, and can be open to expectations, because part of the problem I think humanity has around time is that we've been taught there's a certain set of expectations or responsibilities we have to fulfill in any certain day. And these, again, these are these old paradigms, these old roles that we've been in. Some of these new positions that are opening up for people in the fifth dimension, perhaps like what I'm doing, they don't require a 9 to 5, 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour day. But what happens is when we make that shift, we bring along some of those old imprints with them. So I've actually found myself taking this new role that I'm in as a channel and putting it into kind of like a corporate scenario, and ended up completely miserable, because I thought, wow, I made this great shift, but here I am working like a dog, not happy, right? So we really have to bring those old imprints up and address them with a conscious choice to create space, to create time, to be open to how source energy wants to lead us through our day, to not place these responsibilities and restrictions on ourselves of how much we need to receive. And again, I think some of these old paradigms come from the fact that we were taught that we have to work hard to receive. The amount of time we put in is equal to the amount of resource that we receive. And that's not the case at all, because source energy, it is, when you're in that lane or in that zone, going to provide everything that you need. But we push it in the physical so hard that we forget that we're provided for. So it's a very, I would say, subtle shift of awareness or consciousness to push back on time, and to be intentional in your day with receiving what you need to receive and what you're here to accomplish, and allowing source energy to guide you through. But the other aspect of time that I want to talk about just real briefly, because this came up so big in the expo conference we just did. A lot of people are struggling with literal time loss, and having memories change, and the Mandela effect here on the planet, having physical records change and that sort of thing. People are making huge shifts right now in vibration. And remember, anything physical starts with energy. So we think about a book, for example, that exists here in physical on the planet. That book is actually energetic vibration that we perceive as physical. So that energetic vibration has a speed. So what happens when we shift dimension is we can perceive through a new speed the same history, the same material differently. So I've had many people calling me lately who are saying they're kind of freaking out because memories are changing, the map is changing, some of the history that they're familiar with is changing. And it's not that it's changing so much as it's that we're perceiving it through a new vibration. And it's taking on a new physical aspect or a new memory for us, different than what we perceived it before.
Because where we're standing right now is completely in a different place. We
Absolutely.
have a new
Yeah.
lens, basically, as we do
Yes.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had someone who was just talking about the map. She works a lot with clients on boundaries and things. And she noticed the map of Canada had actually changed. The water bodies were different. And I reminded her that, our actual Earth planet is in a different location in the solar system now because our consciousness has changed, because we've made this shift. So of course, things that we considered very stagnant before are going to show up differently to compensate for where we find ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's amazing.
Yeah. Cool stuff happening on the planet. Yeah. Right.
But do you think that that leads to what, people walk around lately that are going through these shifts and they're so tired? Like people's physical bodies are just exhausted. I mean, is that the physical catching up with that?
Yes, I
Yeah.
believe that it is. And I noticed that too. A lot of clients struggling with adrenal fatigue, exhaustion. What's happened is this new grid, as it was installed, it carried a different magnetic speed, a different harmonic. And we're really used to being focused in our physical material. But our physical material has to change. The vibration has to change in order for us to really implement, and integrate this new information. And we know when we have healings, right? Sometimes we require rest. When we make energetic shifts, we require rest. We've got a big collective shift going on here. So there's a lot of information that we're assimilating. It's not just the physical material, it's actually the information. Because what happened when we go back to the eclipse we had back in August, the record of Mother Gaia just, pretty much exploded on us. It's like a karmic release. And what happened was we were able to access new timeline information. Mm-hmm. And so I notice a lot of people are having struggles with making decisions right now because they see a lot of paths that they can take, a lot of options, a lot of choices. And that's that timeline integration. That's the new information that came in. And we have to integrate information too, right? So that's overwhelming. But making any decision in any direction is a really good tool, because a lot of us are stuck with all this information floating around us, and we're kind of in fear of making the wrong decision, right? Not choosing the right path. What we don't realize is all this is blending together. We see it as separate because we're used to seeing into our reality as linear. But actually it's a collective component that we're integrating. So the more you move your energy towards a certain timeline, the more those timelines are going to begin to blend together. Those who are empathic are especially feeling these energy shifts really intensely. Yeah. I guess I chalk this up to telepathic abilities really becoming enhanced, because the guides have been talking about our chakras in the body becoming integrated as one crystalline source. Mm-hmm. And because of that, we're able to telepathically exchange at a faster speed. And all of this collective density that's come to the surface, many empaths are tuning into the human experience, right, of what's taking place, and really bringing in a lot of that density as well. A really good tool is to ask in meditation, what am I carrying that is mine? And what am I carrying that is not belonging to me? And allow yourself to transmute or move that energy that's not really yours, that you're carrying or taking on or accepting, to the outer edges of your aura and transmute it into the earth. And that's helped people a lot, because we feel a certain way and we immediately jump to, this is me. Something's wrong with me.
Right.
Okay, but we're in a collective energy. So we have a lot of information coming in right now that's not really ours.
Right.
So I think that's contributing to the feeling of exhaustion.
Yeah. And because of the non-linear time, is there a collective that's already living in this fully, in this fifth dimension? Like, is there people that there are ones that have gone before us, or it's already existing, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all of the dimensional realities exist here in this time space.
Right.
So what's happened is we've kind of gone backwards. And we're chipping away at that history to actually restore ourselves back to the original human collective we were created to be.
Yeah.
So I do believe that we exist on multiple dimensional levels. So some of the information that's been coming in is about these energetic containers we operate in. Okay, so we have a soul container, which is kind of like our singular experience and the contracts we've made with friends and family members, right? Children, spouses. We have a higher self container. That's our planetary energy. That's how we connect to the human race. And we have an oversoul container, which is like a universal energy. And that's how we connect to our galactic families and our galactic history. So what's been going on here is we've been connecting the soul and the higher self containers together as one, to be able to move into these dimensional realities differently. So this new grid, it's a multi-dimensional grid. And that multidimensional grid, it'll hold a specific dimensional access for our collective consciousness. So what I believe right now is humanity has the capacity to actually hold a fifth dimensional reality as a collective. But we also have a group of people on the planet that are holding a more third dimensional reality, that are tapping into more old grid energy, right, that we've left behind. But in the soul container, we all have the ability to tap into the multi-dimensional universe at different, relationships. So, some of us in our DNA could be tapping into seventh dimensional energies, 12th dimensional energies. We really have that ability in the soul container to go through our ascension timeline to infinity. It's just our collective reality that kind of, I don't want to say it holds us back, but think of a collective reality as balancing the vibrational speed of all humans into one. Right. So the potential there right now is for a fifth dimensional reality. And I do believe it already exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you find, though, then you work with clients too, we should say that you do offer sessions for people working through a lot of this on their own.
Yes.
Which can be very daunting and hard to do. It's nice to have someone to navigate you at certain times, for sure, because a lot of people are experiencing this but feel very overwhelmed with what comes. And I find like some people's awakenings are very, very quick, and they go from like what you said, living like that third dimensional world and having a job and everything, and then the next day it's like everything's changed. It can be quite overwhelming. So what does a session look like for people that are interested in maybe talking to you about that?
Yeah, well, we can jump timelines really fast. I mean, we can jump timelines in a moment, and everything can change. How many times have we done this before?
Yeah.
In session, what's really interesting is the guides will come in and they'll go through a process of remembrance. So oftentimes what we're doing, if you're open to it, is we're visiting past timelines that are most closely related to your vibrational energy. So the guides will explore the earth, and they'll talk about who you've been on the earth before with very specific gifts that you brought to the earth and how they've manifested. And then they'll go into some of the multidimensional timelines that you have and talk about galactic families, assignments that you've come with from those galactic families. And again, the special gifts and the dimensional access that you have in this life that you brought here. But they'll often, after going through that process, go into your energy and pull up potentials that you've already created. So we talked about the mind and the emotional body creating these potentials. We have so many that are connected to our energy, but of course, what they're going to want to do to benefit you and your vibration is to pull up the ones that most match positively aligned outcomes for you. So oftentimes they'll explore those as well and talk about, right, going into the future, these are some potentials that you have, and they can, you know, cross, expand. You have free will. They're not stagnant, to make them your own. And what often I see in these readings is a lot of these aspects of the self that we've experienced, both in the soul and the collective and the oversoul container, always have some type of an output that we've already seen. And a lot of times we choose our karmic experiences in order to enhance our gifts, to enhance the assignment, the service that we came to offer the planet. So it can give a lot of insight as to why we went through difficult times in our lives or traumas that were significant, and connect them to a higher vibrational path that we're on to actually assist healing here. So a lot of information comes through. And of course we can, you know, these sessions, we can ask specific questions and guide the energy however we want. But in a typical session, that's what the guides will do. It's almost like past, present, future combined into one to help you understand the imprint that you carry here and the potential that you hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the guides talk about some of it not being, I mean, you don't want to know everything, right? Because like if you knew exactly how it's all meant to be, you know, there is no discovering in that energy of your own, right?
Right. Well, I have an interesting theory on this. And, you know, as I channel, my opinions about things completely evolve and change. And, you know, I used to believe that we came in with specific experiences that we were meant to have. And to a degree, I do think we make contracts with people to have certain experiences, to come back into our lives and revisit things. But everything that's held in our record is vibrational. So the experiences that we have are actually molded and shaped through our vibration, our perception, our imprints, and especially how we walk through experience. So we can have a karmic experience erupt, and we can completely elongate, change, shorten, modify that experience based on how we perceive it through human eyes. So is there information the guides don't want to share? I don't often come across that, but what they will say is, if someone asks for a prediction, for example, you know, where am I going to be in another year? Or how's this relationship going to turn out? They'll say, we can tell you the way that we see the vibration going, because there's many potentials that exist for any one relationship, right? Any one position, timeline, whatever it may be. But that may change because you have free will, and they won't step on that free will. So I look at it as less of a not wanting to tell and more of an honoring of free will, because sometimes if the guides might tell an outcome and we perceive that outcome as stagnant, we can suffer, we can struggle with that. And I don't believe that there's anything we can't change or transmute that is within our record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so quickly before we go, what's Ra's big message right now? I'm really curious as to what he has to bring, because I've had a small interaction with him too, and I just would love to hear more of your...
Yeah, you know, what Ra's bringing through is that we have embedded within our DNA a variety of codes that assist us in creation. And he was here on the planet almost as a conduit for helping people understand like that inner technology that you asked about earlier and how it truly works. And I think that's how Mary Magdalene was bringing in some of the messages that were more grounded and earthly for the Christ and walking in with the hand of the Christ in those times. But we have so many planetary alignments that are actually activating that technology, but we haven't quite figured out how to use it. So what Ra's coming in to do is to help us remember that truth about what exists within our DNA, about what these Christ timelines were all about how we activate ourselves to create, and how that creation is just, it's infinite, here on the planet. And we've just limited ourselves so much in what we perceive that we can create in physical, where Ra wants to take it beyond, to actually help us integrate the non-physical aspects of creation so that we can harness this energy that exists within our DNA, this history. One of the analogies that's been coming through a lot lately for me from him and other guides is that we've really been working in the record, our Akashic record, and our past lives, healing. Like, we know we have all these ugly past lives and, right, things that we carry from our ancestors. And we've been focused in that and kind of struggling in the muck and the suffering. And we can get involved in as much of that muck and suffering as we want. It's almost like a ball of yarn that we keep pulling, the string on. It just never ends. But Ra comes in to help us to see that there are timelines that can override that history and take us back to those ancient timelines. So that's what he's bringing in.
That's great.
Yeah.
So say again, you're launching tonight. You're launching your...
Yes, I am launching my Lightworker Inner Circle 8, which is called Changing of the Tide, Architects of a New Humanity. If you're interested in that, you can email support@micheilasheldan.com for more information. But this is a channeled course through Ra, Mary Magdalene, and the Pleiadians. I channeled the first video so far, and it was really groundbreaking information about Jesus and why that timeline manifested here on the earth. I think that your audience would love it. But there's going to be 4 live interactions in January. So, there's some material. There's an activation meditation also from Mary Magdalene to practice as we lead into the live courses. There's enough content to get you through the holidays. And then in January, we're going to meet 4 times live to go through these various teachings in real time. And those videos will be available as a replay. And then I'm going to offer a 2-hour live Q&A as well, just to help people interact with the guides, again, in real time with questions they have and things. So this is going to be really fun. I'm excited about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to link all that so people can connect easily.
Awesome.
Thank you, Micheila. I could talk to you forever.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun. Pleasure. My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Okay.